So we're going to walk through this practice quiz, or this quiz that is from the practice final. There will be questions like this on the final. So number one, the slope of the line passing through those two coordinates, you need to use a slope formula. So there's a slope formula, and when you use the slope formula, I recommend you do the division and the subtraction symbols first, and then plug in your coordinate values and label your coordinate values. And once you label them, it's really easy to plug in. So the y2 value is 5, the y1 value is negative 3, the x2 value is negative 7, the x1 value is negative 7, and wherever you have the minus minus, you have to change it to plus plus. So, and what we really have here is 8, because 5 plus 3 is 8, over 0. And we should all know that when you have a 0 on top, the answer is 0, but when a 0 is underneath, the answer is undefined. So the slope is undefined. So if you write out the word undefined, that's a correct answer. If you do this symbol, I guess I'll accept that also. So either undefined or that symbol is acceptable. You don't have to worry about choosing on the multiple choice final because it's going to be written for you. Number 2, this way. This one's very interesting because you could do it 2 different ways. I want to explain both ways of doing it. So one method is to recognize that this is a XY table, an input-output table. So in reality, you have coordinates, right? So here's a first coordinate, here's a second coordinate, third, fourth, there's a bunch of coordinates here, okay? And if you graph them, you'll see that it is a line. There is a common difference in the outputs. So like from negative 4 to negative 1, there's a common difference of 3, common difference of 3, 3, 3. So this is linear. So you could say that you have a bunch of coordinates, and what you're going to do is use these 2 coordinates. Let me write them over again right here. The coordinate 1, comma, negative 4, and the coordinate 2, comma, negative 1. And you could label them xy, xy. This is your first point, this is your second point, and you could find the slope using the slope formula again. And of course, when you use it, plug it in. y2 is negative 1, y1 is negative 4, x2 is 2, x1 is 1. So change the minus to plus plus. You end up with 3 over 1. Negative 1 plus 4 is 3, and 2 minus 1 is 1. So the slope is really 3, or 3 over 1. So they want us to write a function that actually produces that xy table. So a function, an equation in function form is y by itself, and you could use y equals mx plus b. And we found the m so far. Now all we need is a b. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to write my y equals mx plus b equation, and all I need is my b value. So I already have my m value. We found it using the slope formula, but I also need my b value. And to find my b value, I need to plug in a y, an m, which we already know is 3, and also an x. So where am I going to get an x and y value from? We have tons of x and y values here. It's a whole table's worth. So I'm just going to use this first one. X is 1, y is negative 4. So what I want to do is rewrite my y equals mx plus b equation, plugging in everything that I can. So instead of y, I'm going to plug in negative 4. Then I have the equal sign. M, we found out m was 3. X is 1, so 3 times 1. And then we have the plus b at the very end. So once again, I used this first coordinate. I used those x and y values to plug them in to the x position right here and into the y position right there. So now that I plugged in my y value, my m value, and my x value, I have all these numbers and I have the plus b right here, and I could solve for b. So 3 times 1, that's just 3. Bring down the equal sign, bring down negative 4, bring down plus b. So to get rid of that 3, I'm going to subtract 3 and subtract 3. So negative 7 equals b. Now once you know the m value and the b value, now you can write your y equals mx plus b equation. So my y equals mx plus b equation is y equals 3x minus 7. Now, notice that that's our answer right there. But if you look for this answer on the multiple choice test, you're not going to find it. The reason why is up here it says you want it to be in function notation f of x. So instead of y, all you have to do is replace it to f of x. It's the same thing as y. F of x equals 3x minus 7. This is the correct final answer that you're supposed to have on number 2. Now, that was a long process, right? There is, I think, a shorter way of doing it, an alternate way of doing it, and that way would be to use what we learned most recently, the a sub nth rule. So there's the a sub nth rule, and what we need to realize is that this XY table, it's really like a list, an arithmetic sequence. Now, why do I say arithmetic sequence? Because I have the first output being -4, and interestingly enough, x is 1 right here. So my first number is -4. My second number on the list is -1. My third number on the list is 2. My fourth number on the list is 5, and so on, right? So if I were to think of this list and actually write it out, -4, comma, -1, comma, 2, comma, 5, comma, 8. So if we think of this as a arithmetic sequence, this is your a sub 1 term, your a sub 2 term, and so on and so on. And we do see that there's a common difference from -4 to -1 to 2 to 5 to 8. Or you could find that common difference, d, by actually subtracting one number minus the one before. But we already said 2 take away a -1. We already know that the common difference really is 3 because it's increasing by 3 every time. So let's keep that in mind. The common difference is 3. And we already know the a sub 1 term is -4. So technically, I could actually write my a sub nth rule now. So check this out. Let's write the a sub nth rule. That would be a sub n equals a sub 1, which is what? What's a sub 1? -4, right? That's your first term on the list. First term on the list is -4. Or over here, I wrote it out. First term, a sub 1 is -4. Then we need a plus parenthesis n minus 1 times the common difference d. And what is the common difference? 3. So we put a times 3 right here. And ladies and gentlemen, this is the rule. All we need to do is simplify. And we're going to get the same exact answer that we got over here on this side by doing all that work. So I think this is an even faster method using the a sub nth rule. Let me show you. Let's distribute 3 times n, that's 3n. 3 times -1, that's -3. Bring down the plus -4 in the front. And we can still simplify. Combine the -4 with the -3 in your head. And you're going to have a sub n equals 3n minus 7. Now, of course, again, the instructions say write it in function notation as in f of x. So instead of a sub n, you're going to write f of x equals, instead of 3n, it's 3x minus 7. Notice it's the same exact thing as we found over there. I just think a sub nth rule becomes a lot more in handy on this problem right here. And you guys could use this on the final as well, the a sub nth rule, instead of doing all this work we did over here with slope and then plugging it all back into y equals mx plus b to solve for b. But it's totally up to you. You could choose any method you'd like. I'm showing both for this video, so you could learn both and pick the one you like. Moving on, number 3. Number 3, solve the proportion. So what could we do when we have a proportion? We can cross multiply, sas, right? So what do I really have? I have 1 times 2h equals 8 times 7. So in reality, we have the equation 1 times 2h is 2h, and it really does equal 56 because 8 times 7 is 56. So that's a simple equation to solve. All I need to do is divide by 2, and h will equal 28. And that's your final answer for number 3. Super easy. This will be on the final. Let's take a look at number 4 down here. Wow, it's kind of confusing the way I numbered everything, huh? Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So yeah, it jumps around. This is number 4. It says solve for b. So what does it mean to solve? It means to get that letter by itself on one side of the equal sign. So as you can see, there's no b on the left side. There is a b on the right side. It's right here on the right side of the equal sign. So let's get b all by itself on this side. So let's start moving things. Let's start getting rid of things. And how do you get rid of something? You do the opposite. So the opposite of minus 14, if you want to get rid of minus 14, is add 14. That's right. Negative 14 plus 14, that's 0. And what you do to one side, do to the other side. Now, of course, you can't add 14 to 9a, but you could add 14 to the negative 2. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to add 14 to the negative 2. And 14 take away 2 is 12. So let me rewrite everything now. That is a positive 12, so let me put a plus sign in front of it. I do have a 9a right in front of it, equals 6b minus 9a. So I got rid of the 14. I still need to get rid of everything else on the right side. I need to get rid of the 9a, the negative 9a, and the 6. So how do we get rid of this negative 9a? Adding 9a. Okay, so that'll cancel out. Add 9a. Does that cancel out on the left side? No. 9a plus 9a is how much? 18 of those a's. 9 apples plus 9 apples is 18 apples. Let's bring down the plus 12. Bring down the equal sign, the 6, and the b. It's almost done. What do I need to do for my final step? It says 6 times b. I need to get rid of that multiplication of 6. How do you get rid of a multiplication of 6? Dividing by 6. So you could do this. Now keep in mind that each of these really is divisible by 6. So you might as well split the division of 6 into each of them. So you will have 18 divided by 6 with an a plus 12 divided by 6 equals b. Now is there anything else we could do? Yeah, 18 divided by 6 is 3. So we're going to have 3a, 12 divided by 6 is 2, plus 2 equals b. Once again, 18 divided by 6 is 3 with an a, 12 divided by 6 is 2, and equals b. So b equals 3a plus 2, and that is the answer, ladies and gentlemen. b equals 3a plus 2. That's your answer when they ask you to solve for b. Let's move on to number 5. Number 5 says, use the following information. The number of people seating in each row of a concert form an arithmetic sequence as shown in the table. So imagine you're at a concert. Front row, there's a lot of people right up next to the stage, right? Front row, there's 54 people on the front row. And then you go a little further back, there's not that many people, there's 51. And then the third row back, 48. Fourth row back, 45. So it does say that it is arithmetic. What does arithmetic mean? That there's a common difference. What is the common difference? It's going down by 3, so d is negative 3. Right? And even if you did the math that I asked you to do with common difference, if you take 48 and subtract 51, 48 take away 51, that is negative 3. Okay? On any numbers that you do, you'll get the d being negative 3. Okay, now what is your a sub 1 term? How many people are in the first row? That's your a sub 1 term. How many people are in the first row? 54. That's right. That's the first number on our list, on our sequence. So once you know that, once you know the d, and once you know the a sub 1, the first term, then you could use the a sub nth rule. A sub n equals a sub 1 plus, parenthesis, n minus 1 times the common difference d. So let's actually plug everything in. It's going to be a sub n equals my first term, which is 54, plus, parenthesis, n minus 1 times the common difference, which happens to be negative 3. And let me simplify this by distributing. Negative 3 times n is negative 3n. Negative 3 times negative 1 is positive 3. And again, I'm going to bring down the plus 54 in front. And now I'm going to combine like terms for my final step. There's 54 here plus 3 here. What's 54 plus 3? 57, right? So we really have the a sub nth rule equaling negative 3n plus 57. Now, if they asked for the rule that creates that sequence, you'd be done. But they're actually asking for a specific number. They're asking for how many people are there in the 17th row. Okay? So if this is the rule that produces this list, right? Now let's say you're not too certain about this. You could always plug in the number 1 and see if you actually get 54. So if you plug into the number 1 right here, negative 3 times 1, that's negative 3. Negative 3 plus 57, that really is 54. So you do feel more comfortable about this, right? Or let's say you plugged in 4 If you plug in a 4, you're supposed to get 45. Check it out. Plug in a 4 right here. Negative 3 times 4, that's negative 12. Negative 12 plus 57 on a calculator, you'll find out that it really is positive 45. So you're confident, you're absolutely positive that this is the correct function machine that produces this list. So if they tell you how many people are in the 17th row, all you have to do is input 17 to find your output, which will tell you how many people are in the 17th row. So how do we do that? You simply plug it in. So you have negative 3 times n plus 57. So we are inputting 17. And with the calculator, when you do negative 3 times 17, that's negative 51 plus 57 that you bring down. So you end up with 6 people, which is totally understandable because first row there's a lot of people. Second row there's less, there's less, there's less. If you go all the way out to the 17th row of a concert, there's not that many people out there. There's only 6 people in the 17th row. Make sense? I hope so. Let's move on to number 6. 6, write the point slope form of an equation of a line that passes through the point with the given slope. So they want point slope, so we need to remember what point slope is. So there's your point slope form equation, and they give you the slope and they give you a point. So it's just a question of memorizing this and plugging in your numbers. You don't do any math. And this is how it is on the final, guys. So just make sure you know your forms and plug it in. Again, when you plug it in, I would start by rewriting it with blank spots. And then after that, plug in your values. Y1 is 9, X1 is negative 5, and the M value is negative 6. The only other thing you could do is change the minus minus to plus plus, and you're done. That's your answer. Y minus 9 equals negative 6, parenthesis X plus 5. That's your final answer in point slope form, and that's what we want for number 6. Let's take a look at number 7 over here. It says solve. It's a solving problem. So there's only one variable, b. So we need to simplify each side, and then after simplifying, get b by itself on one side. So let's take a look at the left side. Let's ignore the right side for a little while. This is how I'm going to ignore it. I'm going to cover it up just like that. I want to focus in on the left side first. I want to distribute 7 times b, that's 7b. 7 times negative 2, that's negative 14. And then I'm going to bring down the plus 3. After distributing, there is combining like terms. Negative 14 plus 3. So the 7b comes down one more time. And over here, negative 14 plus 3, that's negative 11 or minus 11. So the left side completely simplifies down to 7b minus 11. Now, let me just put that like that. Ignore the left side for a while. Let me focus in on the right side. So I'm going to distribute 9 times b, that's 9b. 9 times 2, that's 18. Bring down the negative 2b. Bring down the minus 31. And then combine like terms again. 9b and minus 2b, that is 7b. And then when we combine the 18 minus 31, 18 minus 31, that's negative 13, I believe. And of course we have this equal sign separating the two, so we have an equal sign right here. Let me move this out of the way. Okay, so we have that new equation that's simplified. What do we have here? We have 7b minus 11 equals 7b minus 13. So you have b's on both sides. You don't want b's on both sides, so let's get rid of one of them. I want to get rid of the one on the right side by subtracting 7b, which will make it 0. But when you subtract it over here, it also cancels out. So what do we have left? We have negative 11 equals negative 13. And ladies and gentlemen, that's impossible. So that's when we say no, as in no what? Solution. No solution. No solution. Or you could do this symbol right there. Now, what if everything would have canceled out, and instead of negative 11 equals negative 13, what if it would have been negative 11 equals negative 11? Then it would be infinitely many solutions, x equals all real numbers, or in this case, b equals all real numbers. But right here, when it's something impossible, this is not true. You say no, no solution. Moving on to number 8. 8 is a PEMDAS question. So simplifying. So you start with parentheses. You zoom in and do whatever you can inside the parentheses. Inside the parentheses, you have subtraction and exponents. Obviously, you're going to do exponents before subtraction. Where am I getting this from? It's from PEMDAS. And there's a poster we have up in class to help you remember the order that you're supposed to do math. So of course, we're doing parentheses first because that's the first thing on PEMDAS. Then we move to the inside of the parentheses, and there is subtraction and exponent. So obviously we're doing exponent, so we're doing 3 to the third. What is 3 to the third? It's really 3 times 3 times 3, which is 27. So I really have 25 take away 27 inside the parentheses. Now what is 25 take away 27? Negative 2. So what I really have inside the parentheses is a negative 2. So I'm going to rewrite everything, but I'm going to put a negative 2 inside of the parentheses. So I really have an 8 on the outside, parentheses, a negative 2 on the inside. Let me bring down everything else, the plus, the 16, the divided by the 2. So now what I really have, I have parentheses, but there's nothing to do in there. There's no exponents anymore. There is multiplication, addition, or division. What do you do first? You do multiplication first, and then division, and then addition. So right here we're going to do multiplication before division, not because you have to. Well, in this case you do because the multiplication comes first as you go from left to right. So when I do multiplication, 8 times negative 2 is negative 16. And then bring down the plus 16, the divided by 2. And of course we're going to divide before adding, because in PEMDAS you have to do the division before the addition. So what is 16 divided by 2? 8. So I really have negative 16 plus 8. And negative 16 plus 8 is negative 8. And this is our final answer for this simplifying problem on number 8. So the answer to number 8 is negative 8. Let's move on to number 9. It says, write the slope-intercept form of equation that passes through the given point and is perpendicular to the graph of the equation. So this is there's a lot in this question. You need to know, obviously, the definition of perpendicular. If a line is perpendicular, what do you know about the slopes? Perpendicular means opposite reciprocal slopes. Now that really means that you're going to change the sign and flip the fraction. So notice, they give you an equation and they tell you that your equation is going to be perpendicular to this one. So you could clearly see the m value of this equation. The m value is 3. Now your m value is not going to be 3. Your m value is going to be perpendicular to that m value. So what's your m value going to be? Your m value is going to be, if it would have said parallel, it'd be the same exact slope. Okay, on perpendicular, you change the sign and you flip the fraction. So what's it going to be? Negative 1 over 3, negative 1/3. Okay, we all need to know this by next week for the final. Okay, in addition to that, they give us a point that our line passes through. Here's my x value, here's my y value. Now, since they want my slope-intercept form equation, that's what it says right here, slope-intercept form equation, you could just stick with slope-intercept form, or you could say, okay, I have a point, I have a slope, I want to use point-slope form and then change it to slope-intercept. I think I'm just going to stick with slope-intercept though. Y equals mx plus b. Now, what I'm going to do, since I need an m and a b to write in slope-intercept form, but since I already have an m and I don't have a b, I do have an x and y value that I could plug in right here, and I could plug in right here. So I'm going to plug in my x and y values. So instead of y, I'm going to have a negative 5, then I have the equal sign, and then I have my slope, which we said was the perpendicular slope that was given to us, which is negative 1/3, and you're going to multiply it by x, and x happens to be negative 6. And then we still have the plus b at the very end. So when we multiply this fraction times this number, you could put it over 1 to multiply the top with the top and the bottom with the bottom if you don't want to cross cancel yet. So right here, when you multiply negative 1 times negative 6, that becomes positive 6. And then 3 times 1, that's just 3. And we still have the equal sign, the minus 5, we have the plus b. Now what is 6 divided by 3? 2. So what do we have? We have negative 5 equals 2 plus b. Final step would be to get b by itself by subtracting 2. We'll have negative 7 equals b. So b equals negative 7. b equals negative 7. So if you know your m and you know your b, you could write your equation in slope-intercept form. Y equals negative 1/3 x minus 7. That's your slope-intercept form equation. You didn't have to use point slope. You could have used point slope, but we just stuck with slope-intercept. It's totally up to you. That was number 9. Jumping to number 10. It says graph the inequality on the answer column to your left. So we have a graph right here on the answer column. We want to graph the inequality. In order to graph it, you have to get the y equals mx plus b form first, slope-intercept form first. So I'm going to divide by negative 2, divide by negative 2, divide by negative 2. Now, because it's an inequality, you are going to flip the inequality symbol. It's going to be y is less than negative 4x plus 3. That's your inequality that you want to graph. Now, once you have it in this form, you know that the m value is negative 4 and the b value is 3. So the m value is negative 4, your b value is 3. So when we graph this thing, it crosses at 3. So 1, 2, 3 crosses right here. And then the slope is negative 4, which means you're going to go down 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and over 1 and put a dot right there. Now, is this line going to be solid or dotted? Dotted is correct. So this is going to be a dotted line. And on the final, you are going to have some solid, you are going to have some dotted, so you need to know the difference. It's dotted because there is no solid line underneath our inequality. And then we also need to shade in either the left side of this line or the right side of this line. Let's test a point. You could test any point you want. So if you wanted to, you could plug in the coordinate 4, 4. You could plug in a 4 for x and a 4 for y and see if it works. If it does work, that means that it is an answer. That means that all answers are on this side. If it doesn't work, it means it's not an answer. That means that the answers are over here on the other side, right? 4, 4. You could plug in a 4 for x and a 4 for y, work it out and see if it's a true statement or not. Now, the easier one to pick would be the coordinate 0, 0, because it's really easy to do math with 0, 0. Check it out. If I plug in a 0 for y, it's going to say negative 2 times 0, which is still 0. So I will have 0 is greater than, and when I plug in a 0 for x over here, 8 times 0 is 0, minus 6, that'll be a negative 6. So 0 is greater than negative 6. What do you guys think of that? Is 0 greater than negative 6? No. Yes. 0 is greater than any negative number. So this origin point, 0, 0, it does work. It is an answer. That means that all of my answers are on this side, so I shade in this side. If you forget to shade, you don't get the full credit. Of course, on the final exam next week, it's going to be graphed for you on multiple choice. Let's move on to number 11. 11, in the year 2008, Mr. Rubio confiscated 8,500 bags of Takis. In the year 2016, Mr. Rubio confiscated 29,196 bag of Takis. What is the rate of change? The first thing that we need to know is that rate of change means slope. And slope is found with the slope formula, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Of course, you need coordinates. So you need to read this information and create some coordinates here. So your first coordinate, your input is always time. So the year 2008, that's your first x value on the first coordinate. So in 2008, how much did he confiscate? 8,500. So 8,500, that's your first coordinate. Your second coordinate is the next x value, 2016. And the new y value is 29,196. So we're going to use the slope formula. We're going to plug in our values. We're going to label them xy, xy, first point, second point. So we end up with 29,196 minus 8,500. And on the bottom, x2 is 2016. X1 was 2008. So when we do the math, of course, use a calculator. On top, we end up with, so the numerator is 20,696, and the denominator, when you do 2016 to 2008, that's obviously 8 years, right? So we could actually reduce this. We could divide this on the calculator, 20,696 divided by 8, and we get what as an answer? 2,587 is the rate of change. It is the slope. What does that mean? That each year it increased by 2,587 bags. So that's the slope right there. That is your answer. That's the rate of change per year. Moving on to number 12. Number 12 is a simple solving inequality problem. So let's get z by itself on one side, plus 3z. Plus 3z. That's going to be a negative 6z. Minus 6 is greater than 18. Let's get rid of that minus 6 by doing the opposite, plus 6. Add 6 to both sides and maintain the balance. We end up with a negative 6z is greater than 24. Final step will be to divide by negative 6, divide by negative 6. And when you do divide an inequality by a negative, you have to change the inequality symbol. And we do end up with a negative 4. So there's your answer. Z is less than negative 4. Final question on this quiz. Number 13. John wants to buy a car but needs at least $5,000 for a down payment. He has a checking account and a savings account. Which of the following models this situation? The correct answer is what? C. Yeah, the checking account money plus the saving money, it should be greater than or equal to 5,000. Because if he has exactly 5,000, he's good. He could put that money down as a down payment, $5,000. So it is greater than or equal to. So when it says at least, that means greater than or equal to. When it would say at most, then that would be less than or equal to. So please keep that in mind. Your answer to this one is C. We're done with this. If you struggled with this, you will struggle on the final because all of this is on the final. Okay? Good luck.